Welcome to this channel, which is devoted to a reading and better understanding of the book Ascent of Mount Carmel by St. John of the Cross. Today we're on the 30th chapter of the second book, and we're coming up pretty close to the end of the second book, and then we'll be moving on to the third. In the last chapter we discussed how with successive locutions, the understanding, which is an intellectual faculty of the soul, forms the words and explanations of raw concepts that are given to the soul. In this chapter, the 30th chapter, St. John discusses a second type of locution, which is called a formal locution. St. John calls them formal locutions because the concepts are formally communicated supernaturally to the soul by a third party without any effort of the soul itself. The fact that there is no effort by the soul is a difference from successive locutions. But like successive locutions, sometimes the words and explanations of these locutions come to the soul when it's reflecting on a meditation. However, a second difference is that though sometimes the locutions follow in the wake of the meditation, sometimes the locutions also come when a person is thinking of something completely different than the meditation. It comes out of the blue. When locutions come in this manner, there can be no doubt that the words weren't formed by the soul's own understanding because the person was in the middle of thinking about something totally different. But then suddenly clear and distinct words came from elsewhere. Sometimes the words that come to us are clearly formed. Other times they're more like the raw concepts that are communicated directly to the soul. And sometimes there's only one word to describe it. Sometimes there's two or more words. Sometimes after a while, some additional words follow the first, and as we discussed in the last installment, the concepts and words continuously instruct the soul, and it's like a door illuminating our souls, and all this happens without any effort made by the soul. St. John tells us that the effect that formal locutions produce on the soul generally is not particularly profound when they come from God. Ordinarily, these locutions only serve to instruct or illumine the soul in regard to a single thing. And when they come from God, it isn't really necessary for them to produce any other effects. And the only other effect really is that when they come from God, they invariably prepare the soul to be ready and to desire to do whatever the soul is called to do by the Holy Spirit. On the other hand, sometimes with individuals who haven't really progressed so much, and these words come out of the blue, they may be coming from the devil, but then they will have a significant impact on the person. St. John provides us with an example of how a formal locution might play out when the words seem to direct a person to seek a position of importance. St. John presumably provides this example because it's kind of an interesting paradox. God doesn't want to see us attracted by positions of prestige or to be eager for them, even when He commands and obliges us to accept them. And He also is pleased when we're willing to do the lowly things with humility. As an example of this, St. John provides us with the example of Moses, who God commanded to go to Egypt and to persuade Pharaoh to let the Jewish people go. Moses, however, was a model of humility, and he was reluctant. Now, St. John continues to play with this example, and he supposes that perhaps the devil might be behind a locution that directs a person to seek a position of importance and prestige. And the devil would be doing this in order to exploit the person's pride. The person would likely be eager to respond and would be attracted by the possibility of being esteemed by the world. At the same time, the person would find mundane and less esteemed things to be repugnant. The devil can confuse and deceive us in regard to our own motives. So we might think that we're following the will of God, but actually we're just satisfying our own ambition. So we shouldn't attach any more importance to formal locutions than we would with successive locutions. To do so would not only occupy the soul with things that are an approximate means to union with God. What's worse, they could also very easily cause us to be deceived by the devil. And strange and subtle deceptions may arise from locutions if the soul doesn't set up a guard against accepting such things. Normally, we shouldn't bother trying to figure out whether they came from God or came from the devil, because formal locutions have the same potential to cause deception and perils as all these other experiences that we've been talking about in past chapters. Now, there may be some rare occasions that a person might take notice of a formal locution when it's coming from God. But to discern whether it came from God or whether we should take notice of it, we shouldn't try to do that without the aid of a very, very competent spiritual director. St. John tells us, if such an expert person cannot be found, it's much better to attach no importance to these words and to repeat them to nobody, for it's easy to find persons who will ruin the soul rather than edify it. Souls must not be given charge to just any kind of director, since in so grave a matter, it is of the greatest importance whether one goes astray or acts rightly. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment of Ascent of Mount Carmel. We'll be back again in about a week with another one. In the meantime, please pray for the church.